Hi everyone, welcome to the learning and memorization video for this book, Finance Essentials for Entrepreneurs, that is included in your box. I also want you guys to find the cheat sheet and the memorization booklet for the book. I'm here with Naeem, the author of the book, Naeem Zafar, Professor Naeem Zafar. He teaches entrepreneurship at Berkeley. And he's got a very popular class. Honestly, every Berkeley graduate I've met, they remember you for your class. Naeem is not just a professor. In fact, that's one of the reasons I like him even more. He's an entrepreneur. You've started 3 companies and you've been the CEO of
5 companies, yeah. I've worked at 7 startups.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm an electrical engineer by training and trade, got a graduate degree, and worked as an engineer for 10 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I started my first company age 26.
Right.
And then that was in specialized computers. But then went on to do I'm doing my 7th company right now in Internet of Things, IoT space.
Okay.
Last company was acquired by Oracle in
Okay.
mobile security. And if you have an iPhone or iPad with a fingerprint touch ID, we invented that.
Oh, wow, you invented that, okay.
Yeah, our company did.
Right.
So I was the CEO at the end, and Apple bought that companies with 2 hands in between. We were
Okay.
too early.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Naeem has written 5 books on entrepreneurship. I have all 5. And we are including the one that is about finance essentials for entrepreneurs in this one. And the version that you guys have is a special edition for MentorBox members. So we're getting to that level where we're starting to put special edition books in the box. And let me explain a little bit why we include this book. I think this is a very important topic. This is a small book, but it packs a powerful punch. And with the materials that you have in your hand, the booklets and cheat sheets, and also the video that we're about to shoot right now, you would see that it will actually help you understand the basics of business finance really quickly. And why does that matter? Obviously, if you're an entrepreneur or if you are an entrepreneur already or you plan to start a company at some point, you definitely need to know this. As a matter of fact, sometimes it surprises me that how people
Yes, basically there are 2 basic questions it answers. One is, does this business make sense?
Right.
Because nobody will pay a higher price for you to quit whatever you're doing and start a new business.
Right.
So you need to know that financially, is it sound, does it make sense?
Is it feasible? I mean, that's a basic question.
Very basic question.
Yeah.
Most people get too excited and jump in it, and they find out the financial never made sense. So it doesn't take long. The good news is we're going to talk about this. You can do that on one weekend and still be able to watch the football game. It's not complicated. And the second thing is, if you're going to raise money, your investors want to see how much do you need, why this much, and how much will you make.
Right.
This book helps you answer those 2 questions.
Yeah, I can imagine the 2 more important questions than those. Also, I want to add one other point. Even if you are not an entrepreneur, and I always say people should try entrepreneurship at least one time, but entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
Right.
And you work for a company, you work in an organization. You need to understand how businesses work. I mean, can you imagine a situation where, you're inside a company, it actually helps you succeed. I call these people intrapreneurs, people that are inside the company. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this book idea is the finances is a basic concept. Even for an internal project in the company, how much do you need?
Right.
What are the resources necessary? What long would it take? And you'll be much smarter and on a faster track inside a company if you can articulate some of these things and don't be intimidated.
Yeah.
Our goal here is to make you not intimidated.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So with that, pull out the cheat sheet. Yours is printed on much nicer version. This is a prototype. And also the memorization booklet. And the first thing I'm going to ask, which is like that, this is, again, you guys have a much better version printed for you guys. The idea here is very simple. I'm going to ask Naeem to basically go through like maybe 10 minutes, just, anatomy of, basic things that people need to know. And then what we are going to do, now that you have the high-level understanding, we are going to dig into a few exercises in the booklet. And feel free, this book and the way Naeem presents it is is easy. He makes it very easy to understand. I remember you told me one time that you don't have a finance background. You had to learn finance by starting companies, right? So that's actually the best way to actually be a good teacher, and that's why you're probably a good teacher of it, because you teach it in a way that everybody can understand.
That's right.
But feel free to pause at any point and fill out the exercises. So why don't we start with the first high-level view?
Sure. So I think the basic thing to understand is an income statement answers some very simple question. How much money will I make? And what is my cost of making that money? And how much profit will I be left with? So good news is that in an income statement, there's 7 rows which you need to know. And so these rows are same whether you're looking at a startup's income statement, revenue, cost of sales, or sometimes it's called cost of goods sold, and you subtract the 2, you get your gross profit.
Okay.
And from this gross profit, you subtract the other cost of running the company, which is called operating expenses. They're usually in 3 buckets: research and development cost, sales and marketing costs, and general and administrative costs. Collectively, operating expenses. You subtract that and you get your net profit. You notice it's only 7 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. A startup company has the same 7 rows.
Yes.
Large multinational, whether it's IBM, Google, have the same 7 rows. All the complexity of the business could be boiled down to these simple 7 rows. And in this book, and this exercise will show you how to build this income statement in 1 weekend or less.
Okay, yeah, amazing. It's actually that simple.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
So let's even take a very simple example.
Yeah.
Suppose you brew coffee. Let's just run for a single cup of coffee. So what something like that may look like. So let's say we are Starbucks or something like that. We sell coffee rather expensively. What is the cost of that? This is called the variable costs. Money you only spend if you actually make this thing. These things are fixed costs. Whether you sell a single cup of coffee or no cup of coffee, you have to spend those things. So let's separate this concept number 1 to understand. So variable cost will be what? Cost of the beans, the cup, the sugar, all that miscellaneous cost, plus the cost of barista to make this cup of coffee. Suppose baristas make $20 an hour. How many cup of coffee does he make in an hour? I don't know. Maybe when he's really busy, 20. When he's not so busy, 1 or 2. Let's say average 10.
Okay.
So every cup of coffee he's making at $20 an hour is $2 is the cost of labor. So you add this cost, let's say 50 cents, plus this. This is your cost of making the cup. Your gross profit on each cup of coffee is $1.50. Okay. Then all the money you spend in the rent, in the electricity, in the research, all that comes out of here. I don't know how much it is. Let's say $1. So your actual net profit is 50 cents per cup of coffee. This is as simple as that, and we'll show you how to build this. But if you understand this concept, you're already halfway there.
Yeah,
it's not complicated.
Yeah, it's very and this is I think it goes back to I have pitched to a lot of venture capitalists over the years. You obviously have done the same, and it is mind-blowing how and I've also seen a lot of people pitch to me and they don't have the basics down. I mean, when you teach this at Berkeley and you give people class projects to actually go and work on their projects, how many of them actually get this right?
In the beginning, they're all clueless, but by the end of the semester, they all get it. They all create a financial statement.
Okay, so and it's a requirement, right? Because if you have a project, you need to be able to create these effectively.
Yeah, it's essential. So now that we understand the little construct, how this is done, what we need to be able to do is project it for now and over the next few years. Typically, investors want to see a 5-year projection. If you're going to a bank for a bank loan, bank wants to see what is your income statement, sometimes also called profit P&L statement, profit and loss statement. What does it look like? So you want to be able to construct a financial model. A financial model is a spreadsheet which allows you to extract this information.
Yeah, sometimes they call it pro forma income statement, which is just a fancy word for projected.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's spend a couple more minutes on one concept: fixed cost versus variable cost. So, like I said, fixed costs are those which are there whether you sell anything or not sell anything. So these are salaries of your sales and marketing employees, your CEO, CFO, other personnel which you already have to have, or your own salary. If you're doing any research or development and you're doing, all those salaries. For example, let's take an example of a coffee thing. Suppose there's a snowstorm outside, and you're not expecting any customers to come in. It's really like, don't expect much. You don't have to send the barista here all day. You can send him home. If somebody walks in, the manager is going to make the cup of coffee himself. The manager cost is a fixed cost. Because whether you sell or not, we have to pay.
It is open.
But barista cost is a variable cost.
Also, the cost of beans, because you're not selling coffee, therefore
not
there's
spending
no
the
beans.
bean. So this concept, there's no matter what you make, there's some variable cost, which only is necessary if something is being sold.
Right. So to give you another example, the mentor box that you have in your hand. So the cost of the books and the materials we provide and put inside the box to actually produce that box is a variable cost, because if we sell 10,000 of those units versus 1,000, our cost would 10 times. It would be 10 times higher.
The fixed cost of the company will be fixed.
Is rent, office rent, and all that.
So sometimes people ask me, well, I'm running a software business. I don't have anything to sell. So what is my variable cost? And the answer is, in that case, your variable cost will be cost which you pay to a cloud service, perhaps Amazon Web Service,
to host your
software. And if you're using some service to 1-800 number to answer customer support line, because if you don't sell anything, you're not receiving any support customer line. So that could be considered variable cost. So it's not uncommon that for software business, the cost of goods sold could be only 10% of revenue, which covers those variable things. But for a hardware business, this could be 30, 40, 50, 60%.
Okay, sounds good. What's the next step?
So next thing is to understand how do we start building these components.
So 7 components, guys. If you need to, maybe pause the video right now and just look at this frame, this still version of this frame, and just look at the 7 of them. It's just very simple. And it's simple math. And we're going to go through an exercise. Then you guys have even a better understanding of this.
And actually, let me insert one exercise. Actually, what I want you to do, pause the video, and go to finance.google.com or finance.yahoo.com and type your favorite company, maybe Starbucks, maybe Salesforce.com, and click. It'll give you a summary. One of the things on the left-hand column is financial statements. Click on that and just look. You'll see a financial statement with every company, these things spelled out. What you will see, other things will be some other lines below these lines. Those lines will be depreciation, amortization, tax. Don't worry about it.
You'll
hire an accountant, he's going to worry about it. Don't get confused. This all an entrepreneur needs to know. That's it.
That's a really good point. One of the things I can tell you guys is that we are not teaching accounting. The goal here is not to make anybody an accountant. The goal is, as an entrepreneur, you need to have basic understanding of the unit economics, business economics. And this is the idea here is to give you the basic understanding of how to talk this language, to think in this language, so that you can actually build a company.
Very much so. Very much so. So to do these things we just talked about, which is revenue, cost of sales, gross profit, and then we had these different categories of expense, R&D, sales and marketing, and G&A, and then we added that and we subtracted from this number, and we got our net profit. This net profit this is the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So sometimes you see the word EBITDA. It's just a complicated word for kind of your simple net profit before you do all the accounting stuff. So that's all you need to know. So normally when you'll do it, it's going to look like for year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll have numbers filled out. The question is, how do you do that? So I'm going to give you a cheat sheet method. You're actually going to do bottom-up computation for year 1 and 2. I'm going to show you how. You're going to build how many people you need to hire, what is a typical salary, how many things can I sell in the year 1 and 2. We'll build this bottom-up. The cheat sheet method is, then you look at year 5, what could it be based on other companies who are comparable to you? If you're going for venture capital, they want to see year 5 revenue numbers somewhere between 50 and 100 million. If you show up at the 10 million in year 5, they'll go back and say, go back to you're a hobbyist. Or go back to angels.
I can actually did that. So I made that mistake. I went with, I think 5 years out,
Yeah.
my revenue projection was $12 million.
That's
and
like,
they just like, go away.
Go away. It's not it's a bad business. This
Right.
means you need to ask your Uncle Bob to fund it.
Right.
Because it doesn't meet the venture capitalist investment.
Right.
So I call it being in the zone of reason. Zone of reason, year 5, you got to be somewhere between 50 and 100 million.
Okay, that's great. So that's a zone of reason. Let me repeat it. So basically you're saying from the start of the company, in 5 years, you should be. So if you say in 5 years I'll be at $1 billion, nobody believes
It's
you.
not zone of reason.
If you say in 5 years I get to $10 million of revenue, it's just not interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a great point.
So, chances are...
Rule of thumb, basically.
Rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Can you get there every time? Probably not. Would it take some longer? It always does. But
Right.
VCs know that.
Right.
If you give them a 12 million, they're going to divide that by 2 anyway.
Right.
So you want to be in the zone of reason.
Right.
Third thing you do, you look at public companies who are similar to you and figure out what % of revenue do they spend in these buckets.
Oh, that's smart.
And
Okay.
that's usually available right on Yahoo Finance.
Right.
And typically in different industries different, but it's not uncommon that most software companies spend between 8 and 12% of their revenue on R&D. Most companies spend between 35 to 55% of revenue on sales and marketing. And typically it's 6 to 12% on general and administrative costs.
That's a good rule of thumb.
So this is the trick, the secret method you can use. And this is beyond what the book says, so it's good to write that down, guys.
Additional material.
Additional material.
One of the benefits of Mentor Box is that we have things that are not even included in the books.
So my point is, once you pick a number in this range, and you multiply this number with this number, and suddenly you have dollar figures for this, dollar figure for this, and dollar figure for this. Example. Let's take an example. Suppose you pick the number 60 million. And suppose you pick the number 10% in R&D. So suddenly you know your year 5 expense in R&D is 6 million.
That's smart. Okay.
Now once you have bottom-up number, you have done it yourself, you have figured out this number, all you have to do, just like in a chart, you have this point figured out, you have this point figured out, this point figured out, you estimate. You estimate this number just to fit the curve, and suddenly you have numbers for all 5 years, just like this.
Okay, so that's actually pretty interesting. So you go. So let me repeat.
Yeah.
You go to a comparable company, whatever business or project or company that you're looking for, public company. See what percentage of their total revenue or top line goes into these items.
Yeah.
Then shoot to achieve some number between 50 to 100 million. You pick 60 million in year 5. That's so simple and effective. And then multiply that percentage that you looked up for software. This is for software. So you say 10% of 60 million is 6 million. So you have this, all of a sudden you have this number and this number and this number. And you have top line. So you have this whole thing figured out for 0.5 for year 5. All you have to do, this is year 5. And here you're somewhere. You could be at 0. This is like...
and I'm going to show you how to compute this in a few minutes.
Okay.
So you compute this number, you estimate this number, and you fit the graph.
Okay.
Now, why does it work? It works because when investors look at a P&L statement, first thing they do is they know in that industry how much do they spend. So they look at your number here, this it is, they compute this number. And they say, so they're spending 10% in R&D. I guess that's reasonable.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Because
I've totally heard
tricked them.
Yeah, because you went backwards.
Exactly. So suddenly, this looks reasonable. They may not do it, but it looks reasonable. It passes the sanity test, which establishes credibility that you are not too
For the
stupid.
entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur is smart. He's all doing something within reason. He's in the zone of reason. His numbers are reasonable. Okay, point for entrepreneur.
Okay, that's actually kind of mind-blowing. Okay, that's really good.
So this is not in the book, but this is, we're not going to publish this, tell everybody about it, but I want to tell you guys that how you can quickly create this thing. You don't have to sweat all night.
Yeah, because a lot of times people try to do it bottom up. Yeah. So they try to work from here and work back. And it's hard.
Yeah. And I'll tell you in the next few minutes how to get these numbers more accurately. That's not hard. So now the fun part. How do we just learned so far anatomy of the income statement. We looked the secret method how to guesstimate the numbers for year 5. Now we're going to focus on how to compute number for year 1 and 2. One thing I should mention, because people ask me all the time, they say, well, there's no company like me. I'm so unique. So I tell them, look, there are a bunch of species in the world. but really they fall down into 4 buckets. They're mammals, they're birds, they're reptiles, and they're fish.
Right.
Just be one of those. Because all companies fall into 4 species. Either they make software only, they're services, they make hardware of some system of some kind, or some combination. So it's always a company kind of like you. So don't get all freaked out, I'm so unique. You're like one of the other species. So get over yourself.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about, we'll get to revenue a little bit later, but let's talk about expenses, because expenses is what you care about, because how much money you need to raise. So easy way to start is, for most companies, most of your initial expenses are people. So what you do, you start making a list of who do you need to hire and when. So you need to hire maybe a CEO, maybe you are the CEO. Maybe you need a software engineer. Maybe you need a hardware engineer. You need a testing person. You need a marketing person. Maybe some sales or business development people. You estimate what could be their monthly salary. And you can look it up on the internet. This guy, because I'm in a startup company, going to pay them only $5,000 a month. I can get some software guy, maybe offshore or onshore, pick a number. Whatever you think is the monthly number is appropriate. Maybe which country you happen to be in.
Right.
Then you figure out on month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, all the way to month 24 maybe. When do you need this person? And you may say, well, I'm going to be there from day 1, but I only don't need a software person till month 2, and then I'll have 2 people, and so on and so forth. Hardware person I don't need maybe till here, then I need 1. Testing person I don't need for a while till I have something to test. But marketing guy, I'm going to get one from day 1 because I want them to help me figure out, then have 2 people. And similarly,
Salesperson.
You just fill out a matrix, which is common sense. When do you need? Who do you need? Guess
in
what?
Excel.
In Excel.
Yeah.
And you're kind of halfway done. This is the hard part. Now, the easy part is this. You simply multiply this with this and add them all up. So here, your marketing guy was going to cost you $4,000 a month. So one guy here, one guy here. First month you need $9,000. Then you multiply this number with this thing, column. Okay, this month you need $15,000. You can just add them all up. Now, question is, what about all the other pesky thing I don't know anything about, like taxes, payroll, FICA? I need to. What about health insurance?
Right,
what
right.
about rent? What about easy? If you look at it historically, if you take this number and you multiply by 1.25, then you get what they call a burdened cost.
Okay. So basically, you're saying calculate what you can here, multiply what,
25%.
Yeah, fully burdened. Yeah.
And then it's close enough. You don't need to be super accurate. It's close enough. So if this was 9,000, you multiply by 25%, and that gives you 2.25. So total for this month will be, if you multiply this number, will be, if my math is correct, 11,000.
Okay.
We can double check my math. But this number multiplied by 1.25. And that's it. You do that for every month. You don't have, you cannot see 5 years out, but you can see 1 year out. How many people you need help, maybe 18 months. And when you do that, you suddenly got your number for this P&L thing remember we made this chart?
Yeah.
We estimated this year 5 number?
Yeah, you have 5.
And we just computed this number.
I see.
That's it.
Yeah.
And all the complexity, what about pencil, what about travel? This 25% catches it all.
Catches it all. All right.
Only time you need to add something to this is if you're going to do something very special. Like you have to go to a trade show in Germany, that's got $20,000. So in the sales and marketing line, whenever you're going to trade show, you add the $20,000 number here. So any big line items you can add like this.
Okay.
And G&A, you're going to apply for a patent. You need some legal fees.
Then you add it.
Just add the $10,000 for a patent. So there are 2 or 3 items which could be line item added, but bulk of your cost is the people.
Is this times 125?
Yeah, this time 125. Okay. That helps you compute the number here. You can do it for year 1, maybe year 2. And now all you have to do is guess these numbers, so you have kind of this chart which all look the same.
That's interesting.
And you're done with the expense. That's it. You're done.
This is the fastest way to make pro forma financial statements ever. Yeah. Like I've never seen anything like this.
This Excel is your financial model.
Okay.
Now you can do what-if analysis. Once you have the model, you can change the numbers. What if instead of paying this guy $5,000, I paid $15,000? How does my number change? Excel will tell you.
Okay.
And what if this zone of reason, this number is lower than I thought? But it'll tell you. What investors want to see is that you have a model. So you can do what-if analysis. You can play with numbers. You have some clue. Once you have done that, look, what have we done so far? This could be done in about a couple of 3 hours. It's not complicated. The only thing left to do is the revenue side. And revenue side is easy. I can do it even very quickly. Why? Because we already know what the revenue will be year 5 because it's in the zone of reason.
Right. It has to reach somewhere between 50 to 100 million.
Yeah, for a venture fundable company.
Right.
Or between 20 and 50 for an angel investable company.
Okay.
Uncle Bob or your relative or somebody for less than 10 million because it's too small. Nobody's
Okay.
going to fund it but your...
Yeah, and that's fine. If you are not planning to raise venture capital or raise angel money, put whatever it is. It could be, I want to open a pizza shop.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like,
Maybe in 5 years, you want to be, selling some small number.
Yeah, $1 million a year. I mean, it doesn't matter. The method applies. So he actually starts from the end. By the way, starting from the end is one of the tricks that I talk to all the time, which is like most problems, you should actually solve them backward. Yeah. So start from the end. You have the beginning, this very simple model for the beginning.
And this for the expense. On the revenue side, you should have some idea what can I sell because in the 1 year you can kind of see.
Right.
It'll take you 6 to 8 months to build this thing.
Right.
Okay, there is a pizza shop. It takes you 4 or 5 months to get all the certification and labor certificate and CT approval. If it's some product you're building, maybe 7, 8, 9 months. So the revenue in the first year could be 0.
Right.
Or if it's a pizza shop, you can figure out you open in 6 months, what can you sell? And then basically, if you're selling some kind of a widget, it could be, you're selling 10 units. Each unit costs $50,000. So your year 2 revenue is $500,000. So you kind of bottom up estimate year 1 and 2. Year 5 comes from zone of reason. You estimate in between. You got it.
That's it.
Now you have estimated every single thing on this 7 items.
7 items. Yeah. So basically, just to wrap it up, 7 items. You estimated based on start from the end, based on what is reasonable, and you can look at comparables, from public companies, information that is available. Work this out. The beginning, we now gave you a simple method to calculate the cost. Top line is what is the estimated, sales, and then you have bam.
Yeah, you got it. That's it. That's the gist of it.
Okay, all right. So
now we should go into some very specific exercises. So I want to make sure you come along with us.
All right. So Professor Zafar and I, we were just talking about what he just did on the board. And actually, he agreed to work with us to create an Excel sheet that we will include with the example that we just walked through on the flash drive. So it should be on your flash drive when you're watching this video. And tell us a little bit, basically, we're going to give them the variables that we just talked about.
Just like we saw the hiring plan, there'll be Excel sheet. So all you have to input is what are the reasonable salaries per month in your region, and when you need to add this person. And we'll automatically, Excel spreadsheet computes the total amount, and you put what is my overhead number, 25%, and it'll automatically compute, and it'll show you all the numbers added up very quickly.
Yeah, that should be a good tool to give to our members. So we will include that on the flash drive.
So this is the beginning of your financial model.
Yes, exactly. So what's the next step?
Next step is we really want to give them some exercises.
Through exercises. So time to go through your memorization booklet. And we are not going to go through all the exercises, am I right?
Yeah.
So, but again, the idea is very simple here. The idea is, I always say there are 4 methods of learning: visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic. So reading, you hopefully read the cheat sheet. Visual, auditory, we just provided. This is one way of learning. And then kinesthetic would be actually learning by doing, which is what you're about to do by writing in your booklet as we walk you through it. So the combination of these 4, everybody would learn. Different people have different preferences. But the work of the combination of these 4 work together so that you guys would never be confused with financial statements ever again. So that's the idea.
Yeah, I think first exercise really is to look at public companies. All public companies have to publish the financial statement. And you can just do a Google search, financial income statement, your favorite company's name, income statement of McDonald's. And you'll be able to find a PDF which shows exactly. So first exercise is go and look at 5 of them. Find those 7 things we talked about in that statement. And I want you to go, oh, I see it. It's the same thing.
Right.
Just do that. Just So this will take the fear out. People are afraid. They see the numbers. They'll go, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
It's
Yeah.
not complicated. It's the same 7 rows, and just public, income statement, Google, income statement, whatever, and do that. That's your first exercise. Okay, entrepreneurs, time to hit the road. So what I want you to do is open your booklet, and the first section we're going to focus on, does the business is viable? Does it make sense? Would it be good business? Because you're going to invest your part of your savings and your time into this, so we're going to make sure.
Not to mention other people's money if
Not
you
to
raise
mention other
money.
people's money.
Yeah.
So first thing you should do is, let's answer the first question. I want you to go to question number 1 and write down what is your idea. And the best way to describe your idea is what problem are you solving and who has this problem. It could be as simple as nobody in my neighborhood or in the city has East Coast style thin crust pizza. And I have everywhere pizza, there's no thin crust, true New York style pizza. So that's where I want to start. Or it could be some very scientific breakthrough high technology product. Every company in the world exists to solve an unmet need.
Yeah.
So by able to write down what problem are you solving and who has this problem is going to be harder than you think. Because that's the clarity you will have to iterate to get it right down. But I want you to write it down on this page exercise question number 1.
Okay, now tell us why it's important to actually write it down. Because most people say, oh, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, they do that. See, when you start trying what I'm doing, they start talking about how are they doing it. They say, I have this really cool idea, this technology. Stop. What problem are you solving and who has this problem?
Right.
So you have to write it down like this. You're going to be hard for you to write it down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like in concisely articulating it, coming out, because a lot of times the idea is in your head, but it's fuzzy.
Yeah.
When you articulate it by writing it down, it becomes very crystal
So it's very
clear.
essential to do. You can have multiple iterations. You'll throw away and rewrite it. But if you have more than one idea, write it down. What problem are you solving and who has this problem?
Okay.
So then, then you're going to look at this, is this a scalable business? A scalable business or a scalable business model is when a cost of serving the next customer is extremely small. And a non-scalable business when every customer takes same number of effort. So let's take an example of a barber. If 1,000 people show up for a haircut, a barber can't handle 1,000 people.
Right.
He or she can have to line them up.
Right.
Non-scalable business model. But let's say your Facebook or YouTube, once you've set up a server to serve one video, if 1,000 people want to watch, you just same server can serve 1,000. If 2,000 want to watch, you set up a second server instantly. Very scalable. So scalable businesses are highly profitable, hence very attractive to investors. So you want to write this down, that how scalable is your business as part of writing what the business is.
And there's 2 dimensions here. One is whether or not your business is attractive to outside investors. Scalable businesses by far are more attractive. But then if your business model is not scalable, it's fine. Just we don't want you to lie to yourself and say it is scalable. Just know that it is a different business dynamics. It's going to take time, and it wouldn't be something that you can raise a lot of outside capital and blow it up out of proportions. It is going to take years, which is fine. It is what they call lifestyle business.
Lifestyle. So dentist, a doctor, and a barber. These are good businesses, but they have a different dynamics than somebody making a widget or a chip and selling millions of those.
Right, and the same concepts of financial statements exactly apply. It's just, the goal is different here.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, so take some time, pause the video, write it down. When you have written it down, then come back for more. Okay, let's talk about exercise number 2. So exercise number 2 is about cost of sales. Everything you sell, there's certain cost which company incurs. Sometimes it's called cost of goods sold. But obviously, in a software business, there's no goods being sold, so cost of sales is a more generic term. But cost of goods sold or COGS is also used commonly. Same thing. So what will be an example? We talked about in cup of coffee, it was the cost of beans, cup, labor to make the coffee. These were the variable costs. In a pizza store, it will be the actually dough, and it will be the sauces and ingredients. Will be the cost of sale and the labor to make it. In a software business, it could be the server cost, where your product is being served, any hotline support thing. So this is important because if you sell something for $10, that's your revenue, how much you get. If your cost of sales is $4, this is your gross profit. Gross profit to me is one of the most important concepts in the business. Why? Because if gross profit is bad, it doesn't matter how efficiently you run your company, your R&D, your G&A, you will have a lousy net profit. So, for example, if you were to sell dollar bills for 98 cents, your revenue will go through the roof like this, but you'll be losing 2 cents on every transaction. So your gross profit is negative. That's no good. So what I want you to do is estimate what is your cost of goods sold or cost of sales will be for each thing you will deliver. If you're running a gym and somebody pays $60 for a session and you pay the trainer $20, so your cost of sales is $20. Your revenue is $50. Your gross profit is $30. From that $30, you pay for the building, the rent, the equipment, the exercise. You have a net profit. Same concept. It's not complicated. So write down your cost of sales for whatever you're planning to make or sell, and write it down and admire it for a few seconds. You want to make sure it's a positive number.
Yeah, because if it's negative, doesn't matter how you scale. It just doesn't. It will never work.
That's like selling dollar bills for 98 cents.
Yeah, it just never works.
All right. So hopefully you have done your first few exercises. Let me take you to exercise number 4, and this has to do with revenue. So revenue is simple. Revenue is what you expect to sell. On month number 1 to month number 2, 12, you add them up, and that's your year 1, and similarly you have year 2 and year 3. Question is, the revenue, I want you to write down what will be your source of revenue. And like the exercise talks about, if you're selling coffee, maybe some additional things you can sell to the same customer. If they're waiting for coffee, we can sell them the newspaper. We can sell them a coffee mug or a t-shirt. So those could be additional sources of revenue. So you may have multiple. 1, 2, or 3 sources of revenue, as long as they're adjacent, because investors want to make sure, and you want to make sure they're not too distracting. But if you have a customer waiting for coffee or waiting for whatever product, additional thing you can sell them. So if you notice that like companies like Intuit, they sell you the software for doing your taxes, like TurboTax, but they have additional things you can buy which are tax related. So there are other revenue streams you may have. So write down for this exercise, what is your first source of revenue? So maybe you expect to make $200,000 from first rows of revenue, and something else maybe $50,000. Now if you also have a third source of revenue, which is $1,000, write it down, but then ask yourself, this is such a small component, is it really worth it? Or should I just not even bother? You want to deal with big chunks, and because you have limited number of hours in the day and limited number of things you can do. So you want to eliminate, just because you can do it, don't do it. Do as few things as possible and do them well.
Okay. So also one of the things that I always tell entrepreneur is try to establish what is the main source of revenue. What is the main thing? And then everything else is like builds on top.
Adjacent to that. Yeah, but there got to be only one. You cannot be doing 3 things. Like I have a salad bar and a pizza place.
Right.
Be good at making pizza.
Yeah. Be a pizza shop. Now you might sell some salad
beer
too,
or
whatever.
But that's not. What do you do really better than anybody else? That should be your edge.
Yes.
So you got to know your edge.
Right.
So write down, basically this exercise is for you to write down on a piece of paper your source of revenue, main source of revenue, what do you do better than anybody else? And if you happen to have, you don't have to, a second or third, is good to articulate it, but it's not essential. Sometimes what it is that you start with one, but year 3 and 4, you add second and
extra
third
ones,
Because by that time you have a customer base, they like you, they trust you, they're willing to buy other things from you. So sometimes this is a trick actually, because you're estimating your 5-year.
Right.
You've estimated like 65 million for year 5.
Right.
And year 1 is coming out to be 0. Year 2 it came out to be like maybe $500,000. And you say like, how do I justify this steep curve? And answer is, You may decide that here you're going to enter Chinese market or European market. So that can give you a boost. You suddenly go to 41 million. And here, maybe you jump to like 20 million or 20 million because you add a second product. So suddenly it looks like you're going from here to there to a larger number.
And it just sounds unreasonable.
This jump actually sounds a little bit too unreasonable. So a more reasonable jump will be that you're going from like 500,000 to maybe 4 million to maybe 18 million. And then it looks a little bit more reasonable.
Which is why one of the themes that I see Professor Zafar continuously talk about is like, try to look reasonable here.
Yeah.
Because you want to, so this is, remember, this is basically what you're doing is you're crafting a story.
Yeah.
And for your bank, for your employees, for your investors, if you're going to have investors, the story has to be believable and within reason. Otherwise, it just looks odd.
Yeah, looks odd, exactly. It has to be, because nobody knows that what will be revenue need 3 or 4. Investors know, you don't know.
Right.
But question is, did you put together a reasonable model?
Right.
Do you have reasonable assumption? That's what I want to see. And they know nobody knows. Sometimes you just put a stake in the ground and now you're going to hire the relevant number of people to make sure you get close to this number.
Right.
So this is putting a stake in the ground.
So how about, I see these companies, I mean, especially in Silicon Valley more than anywhere else, people come in and like, oh, we don't worry about revenue. So what do you tell them?
So I think answer to that question is there is 2 buckets. One is B2C companies and B2B companies. B2C are business selling to consumer, like Amazon,
business
like eBay.
To consumer.
Business to consumer.
Right.
So business to consumer companies example would be what? Like Amazon, which is selling to consumer things, or it could be any one of things which we are used to buying, like Facebook. Then there are business to business companies which sell things to other businesses. B2B, like Intel is a B2B company. They sell microprocessor chips to other laptop makers or mobile phone devices. Here, B2B companies, you have to show revenue. You have to have a credible story to get there. B2C is somewhat different. The reason is people can only remember one name. If you force me to tell you who's the number 2 players in online auction after eBay,
you don't
I don't know.
Right.
And I don't care.
Right.
And similarly, who do I go to buy something? I just go to Amazon. I don't know who the number 2 is, and I don't care.
Right.
So in that example, the companies who are going after that, they don't worry about revenue. Their job is to become the number 1 name, only name people remember, like Twitter.
Right.
So then, once you got them,
completely different story,
then when you got that, you become the name. Then there'll be many ways to monetize. But even investors want to hear your ideas. How will you monetize them? You can show 0 revenue for 3 years. But then you got to show something after.
Yeah, you say basically for 5 years. I mean, the business. I mean, you cannot start a pizza shop and just sell pizza for free for 5 years. That doesn't work. But in a B2C company, a scalable B2C company, for some people, and this is a very small number, it makes sense to say, we are going, this is a land grab. So I'm going to go very aggressively for a few years, making no money, just burn through cash. And these are very, high risk, high reward games. And it's not normal businesses are not built this way. But we want to kind of cover them for the sake of completeness.
It's good to talk about it because somebody will trick you saying, well, you're not supposed to worry about revenue. Even those businesses, land grab, eventually you have to make a profit, otherwise you don't exist.
Yeah, exactly. End of the day, business has to make very simple stuff.
Okay. So this is what we wanted to write about revenue. So your exercise is write down your sources of revenue and then see are they pass the test of reason. So just do that and we'll come back with more. All right, so you're following up, you're doing your exercises. Now we exercise number 12. So this is about KPIs, key performance indicators. What do we mean by that? So you notice, if you're a pilot, you don't fly a plane. You select what instruments you want in your instrument panel. Actually, you get to choose. If you're buying a Cessna, you get to choose what it is. Now in car, the car manufacturer chooses for you. But every car has its own instrument panel. So every business has an instrument panel.
Yes.
So in a car, what do you look at? Maybe, your mileage, how many miles per hour you're driving, maybe your temperature of your coolant, maybe RPM. Like you have 4 or 5. So every business needs to have some KPIs. Maybe it's number of coffee cups sold per day. Maybe it's profit per coffee cup. Maybe it's something else. Maybe number of people who walk in and how long they stayed. So if you read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, they talk about this company, the starts with a W, your store which sells pharmacy stores. What's the name of the?
Walgreens.
Walgreens.
Yes.
So Walgreens focused on one metric, which was profit per customer visit.
Yes.
Not the revenue per
Yes.
customer, not number of visits, but profit. And this allows you to make hundreds of other decisions, like what do
Just
you display
cascades
at Cascade,
down,
what do you
yeah.
display at the eye level, the
Right.
most profitable items, not the most smallest item. So you need to know what are the 3 or 4 things you want to watch in your business which are going to define your business. So I want you to write that down. And I've given you some examples in the book and in the book, but you need to, for your business, what are the 2 or 3 KPIs, and what number will make it excellent, what number will be minimally acceptable.
Okay, so let's talk about it, because KPIs, picking KPIs is probably like half the battle.
Yeah.
Because you cannot run or optimize a business unless you're actually looking at the right numbers. And here's another thing that I've noticed is that once you have your KPI and you're looking at it every day, somehow magically it improves. Like it's as if like looking at it somehow, like even if it applies to life, like if you want to lose weight, the best way to lose weight is to measure your weight every day.
Yeah.
So it totally like that's
There's
a
an
KPI.
adage, you can't improve if you don't measure it.
Yeah. So how many numbers, how many KPIs do you think?
I think not too many. Just like your car, is less than 5, is more than 2.
Okay, so it's somewhere between 2 and 5. That's I normally pick 3 or 4 too. Yeah.
So it's not a lot. And you can change them over period. I mean, it's not like change them every week. You can change them next year.
Right.
But what's important to you in the next 12 months to 18 months? What 2 or 3, 4 things will tell you if the car is running at the optimal performance or your business is running at optimal performance? So I want you to write them down, examine them, and write down your minimum acceptable number and your what desirable number, which will say excellent.
Yeah.
So again, going with the pizza shop example or coffee, if you were selling at least 30 customers, that's the minimum for you to break even. But you're selling 100 customers or more, that's great.
Right.
So write down those 2 numbers.
Right. And I mean, that goes back to a point that I made at the beginning, that even if you're not starting a business and you work for a company,
Knowing that.
know what are the KPIs in that company, or being able to articulate it to your boss or manager or CEO, saying, we need to have KPIs that we look at. If the company doesn't, I believe it or not, there are some big companies that just run without it.
That's true.
And or if there is, you need to know it so that you know what defines success for your company.
And even if you look at a big company, it'll be good to ask your manager or your CEO, what are your KPIs? What are you watching?
Right.
And nothing else will make you sound smart.
Yeah, that's right.
So do that. Exercise number 13, let's take a closer look at that. And this has to do with break-even point. So break-even point is important because most businesses, when they start over time, chances are they're going to lose some money till at some point they're going to start making money. So at some point, when your expenses are equal to your revenue, now you begin to make money. At some point, you recover all the money you had lost. So these points are important to know. And how long does it take to get to this point? And how long does it take to get to this point? Then how much money will you make? These are the key important factors you have to be comfortable knowing and articulating.
So the y-axis here is your sales, or actually the gross revenue. Yeah.
And
this
time.
is time. Yeah.
So you may say, for the first 9 months, we're going to lose this much money. We'll be out, I'm just making it up, $1 million. Then we're going to start making money, and by the time we'll be making a lot more money. So if you're going to sink about $1 million into this thing before you start making money, you better make sure you have a plan to raise enough money to last this much. Maybe you should be raising $1.5 million.
Because never things go as planned.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is the point. You need to know the break-even point, and how long would it take? Would it be 17 months? Will it be 2 months? Because in the next exercise, this will become important. And next exercise, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, is to do sensitivity analysis.
Yes.
And sensitivity analysis, let's talk about it now. That's your next exercise, number 14. That suddenly, what if your product takes not 6 months to develop, but 9 months? What happens? What happens to your break-even point? And if you had the financial model, you'll be able to say, yes, sir, in that case, we're going to need to raise $1.8 million because it will take us now 11 months to reach break-even point. If you don't have the model, you cannot answer this question. You say, hey, Bob, do you know? Or did you look into that? But
Right.
financial model, you'll be able to answer those questions.
And one thing I can tell you is, if you're not doing these things, assume that you're going to an investor presentation to present your new business idea, and you haven't done this homework. One, you're gonna look dumb. So the investors are asking these questions, and it feels like you're totally not prepared. The second thing is, even if investors look past that, they would go in the back room and they would try to do this calculation themselves anyways. And you don't want them to try to figure out your business without you being in the room. So you want to actually go in with your own assumptions, in your own words, explaining your business.
Exactly.
And the same, another thing is, like, sounds like this is only for new businesses, but that's not true. So even an existing big company, let's say you take on a new initiative in your current company and you want to launch a project, or you're advocating a new launch of a project in your company, a new product, you need to know, because end of the day, the CEO of the company will look at a project, will look at these exact same calculations, and they would decide whether this project is something they can take on, given the cash position of the company.
That's exactly right. Okay, so now is the fun part. We're coming to the last exercise, because last exercise is to understand the stages of funding. What I want you to do in this exercise is write down how much you have computed by now, how much money you need. Where would you go for this money? What will be your sources? So exercises actually ask you specifically to write down the name of the investors, angels, VCs. The reason is, in a business, as you raise money, you don't try to raise all the money in one chunk. Businesses go through what I call value inflection points. A value inflection point could be that suddenly you have a prototype working. Next thing, you have now 3 customers or 2 customers paying you money to use it. Company value just suddenly jumped based on that. So this is time, this company value. So you had just an idea and 2 guys. Company value was pretty low. Now you have some kind of a prototype, and this is a value inflection point. And company just jumps to value. Then something else happened because you got your first 1 or 2 customers. Then sometime later, you had an agreement for some big company to distribute your product. So you have some distribution or partnership, and the company value just jumped. You want to raise enough money to go hit the value inflection point. So here, you need to raise enough money to hit this point, and a little bit after, because it takes about 4 to 6 months to raise money.
And then raise money right there.
So if this value inflection point was in 7 months, you want to raise enough money for 13 months. How much money do you need to raise for 13 months? Well, you go back to your financial model, and you have it done month by month for the first 2 years. You look at the number, add them up, and that's it. So then when you raise this money, now you're working on second inflection point. You figure out how much it is. You raise money reach the second inflection point. So this is really the simple math.
Right. And it's interesting because I see entrepreneurs all the time. They say, well, I can raise enough to get to here, from here to here, or from here to here. I'm like, well, then you go back to the investors with the exact same story. So your story has not changed. So you need to raise enough to be able to jump to a different point.
So this is, I usually draw this picture for entrepreneurs. There's a famous Chinese saying, don't try to jump a canyon in 2 bounds. You want to jump all the way across. So you want to raise enough money, you can hit the value inflection point. Otherwise,
you just are here, but the story hasn't changed. You have raised some money, you have kind of blew
$500,000, and you look even riskier than you looked before.
Right.
So you want to raise enough money. So this part of the exercise will be, and some future books which we'll talk to you about computing the right amount and then going to the right type of investor, because there are different investors. Like a venture capital, you don't go to them necessarily initially because they typically write checks between $3 and $20 million.
$20 million. Actually, that's a really important point. Here's one thing that I tell entrepreneurs how to think. You have to be able to think like how investors work. Investors, after a while, each investor, they have a typical check size. And why? Because they've done it over and over. They have a formula now. So some people write $100,000 checks. Some people write $25,000 checks. Some people write they never write a check less than $3 million. So different investors, they have different funding amounts that they write. And you need to, once you know how much you're raising, then you can basically eliminate the rest of them.
And this is why typically, in an example, what happens is you go to friends, families, and fools. It's a term actually used. Which
Friends,
means these
families,
people,
and fools.
They,
Yeah.
they may not fully understand the business, but they like you.
Right.
They trust you.
Right.
So they may be willing to give you money. So first, typically, from $10,000 to maybe $100,000, this is your source of investors. When you're looking from here to maybe a couple $1 million, this area are angel investors.
Angel investors.
And angel investors are what? Rich people who want to diversify their holding. They are willing to take some small portion, invest in the company, and stay connected with something they know something about.
Right.
They like the entrepreneur. They see a younger version of themselves in him or her. So they want to invest in you. So this is a very important part of the ecosystem. So when you go from like 3 to 20 million, now the venture capital become a relevant source.
Yeah.
So you need to know which stage you are, who should you go to, and we describe all that in some of the future topics we'll talk. But this is what I want you to do part of this exercise number 15. Write down who are your source of investors based on what you computed, how much capital you need.
Actually, you wrote a book about this, right?
Yeah.
So you wrote a book, Get Funded. So Naeem has written 5 books that used 2 of them as textbooks at Berkeley.
Yes.
We are bringing Berkeley education to you guys in this box. So.
And also Brown University, I'm a professor of the practice at Brown.
Okay, yeah.
So I've taught this course with this book. So this book is all about, the subtitle says, a definitive guide to seeking the right funding from the right time from the right source.
Which is the story.
Which is really this
We
thing.
just described it to you guys.
How do you go to them? What do you say to them? How much do you raise? What's the method? This is all described in this book.
And tell us a little bit about, now that we're at it, talk about that.
So this other book is called Market Research on a Shoestring.
Which is so important, market research. Yeah, it is interesting.
And this talks about not the big market research, but a hacker's way, because entrepreneurs are broke.
Right.
We have $2 in our pocket.
Right.
So how do you validate your big idea under $100? That's a subtitle. So it gives you all the cheat sheet methods of how do you use Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn to find experts, to get data, resources like census.gov, how to use Google AdWords to do market validation.
Yeah, I do. You use Google AdWords all the time.
So all that is described in this book.
Yeah, and we can, in the future, we don't want to overwhelm our members with this content. That's why we use, we deliver this content in chunks, but these are the things that we can cover in the
And this
future.
book we just talked about, we're all familiar with this one.
Yes.
And then this is an interesting book. It's the legal guide to starting up. And basically I wrote it with a couple of lawyers who refused to show their name. Because these are 35 little known tricks, how you can reduce your legal fees and outsmart the legal law firms in their own game.
Okay.
So this could be very useful.
I probably need that.
But finally, I think if you're just starting out with something simple idea, this may be a simple book for you to read. It's called 7 Steps to a Successful Startup. It really answers the question, are you really an entrepreneur? Do you know how to think about a business? The 7 questions, if you can answer before you quitting your day job, that's a subtitle. The essential homework before you quit your day job, you'll have a much better footing. Is it worth taking the risk? Or are you better off sticking with a day job?
Yeah, and I think entrepreneurship is a little bit too glorified, at least in America. Yeah. So we have members who are not American, but in America it is too glorified. And sometimes people jump into it without knowing what to expect, and it destroys their lives. But I tell you this, guys, regardless of whether entrepreneurship is for you or not, you want to learn the basics, like what we talked about, because one, these skills become useful even if you don't end up becoming an entrepreneur. Yeah. And 2, if you're actually going to try it, you better take your best shot possible at it. And a little bit of homework goes a long way.
Yeah, and all these books are available at 5mountainpress.com or startup-advisor.com.
Okay, and it's on the cover of the book.
The cover of the book. Yeah.
Special edition of the book for MentorBox members only.
Okay, well, do your homework, and we'll be right back to check up on you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening. Hope this was useful.